She humiliated me in front of her family. I exposed her double life during the wedding toast. I am a 33-year-old man, and the first humiliation wasn't loud, it was tidy. It happened at her mother's dining table, a long walnut raft where I'd learned to pass plates rightward and opinions leftward. Her father liked to pose questions like traps, salary, timelines, what I could offer his daughter, and I'd gotten good at answering without scraping the plate. That night, though, she decided to help. She smiled with her jaw tight and told her family I was still figuring myself out, that my freelance thing felt like a hobby, that she was carrying the adult part. I watched her mother's eyebrows rise and her sister cross her arms and her father lean back the way men do when they think a verdict is walking toward them. The word hobby landed on my chest like a wet shirt. I run an IT consultancy. I keep small companies alive. I replace panic with plans. A hobby doesn't pay 2 rents the year your partner loses hers. I tried to swallow my pride with the roasted carrots. Pride has bones, it doesn't go down easy. She patted my forearm as if to soften the blow and added that I was sensitive lately, which is the kind of sentence people use when they want the room to side with them before facts arrive. Later, in the car, I asked why she did that. She called it crowd management. She said if I wanted her father's respect, I should make the numbers louder. I drove in silence, counting the streetlights because math is kinder than certain types of love. Her name is Alina. We met at a friend's graduation party, the kind of place where paper plates buckle under ambition. She was kinetic, hand-talking, head tilting, eyes bright with plans. I was the yes where she needed one, yes to moving apartments after a landlord ghosted, yes to midnight airport runs when clients flew her to creative retreats, yes to late dinners where she spoke in loops about brand voice and founder energy. I liked her audacity. I mistook audacity for honesty. Between the humiliation and the wedding sat a year of small edits. She dropped friends who asked questions. She kept the ones who clapped. She started speaking in captions. She asked for space when I asked for specifics. She said my need to label things felt controlling, which is funny when you're the one dating a spreadsheet. We got engaged in a restaurant with too much glass and not enough bread. She cried in the right places and posted the right photo and told me our wedding would be a collaboration. It was, in the sense that I collaborated by paying invoices on time and carrying chairs and not complaining when the guest list ballooned to include people who would never remember my name. The second humiliation came during the tasting, when her uncle raised a glass and told the room I was lucky to have found a woman who could upgrade him. People laughed the way they do when cruelty puts on a blazer. Alina didn't correct him. She squeezed my knee under the table like someone putting out a cigarette. Later, she told me not to take everything personal. I tried not to. My skin tried, too. It failed. I noticed the second phone in June. It was white, thinner, the kind you buy when you want a new life to feel light in your palm. It lived in her tote under a book she wasn't reading. When it vibrated, she didn't flinch, she moved, quick, like muscle memory. I asked about it once. She said work needed a backup. I let the lie pass through me like a draft, cold and familiar. Then the invoices started to misbehave. A charge from a boutique hotel across town for a day suite. A ride share to a loft in a neighborhood that doesn't deliver apologies. A skincare subscription addressed to a name I'd never heard, Lena Ash. Small letters, cheap alias. The kind of change you think no one will notice if you tilt your head. I began a folder called Record. Not in the spirit of litigating a relationship. In the spirit of not letting reality be revised by someone who loves a good story. There were gaps in the calendar that filled themselves once you knew what to look for. Early dinner with donors sat next to a receipt for cocktails for 2 at a bar that doesn't serve food. Studio night sat next to a photo she'd posted from a penthouse she captioned mood board, a word she uses when she needs the world to think she was working. In the background of a mirror shot, I spotted a man's shirt on a chair, the shoulders too broad, the color too deliberate. A ghost is just a person you don't admit is in the room. I asked her one more time in the safe way. Was everything okay? Was I missing something? Did she feel far because she was afraid of the bigness of weddings, or because there was something in the smallness of daily life she couldn't name? She kissed my forehead and said I was projecting. She said she'd never betray me. She said I was lucky she understood the way anxious brains spin. It was neat, the way she turned the compass so that the needle pointed back at me. 3 weeks before the wedding, her sister texted me a photo I wasn't meant to see, Alina trying on a white suit in a mirror that was not in any store in our zip code. The caption read, "Power." The mirror had a dent at the edge. The white phone sat on the sink. A toothbrush lived there. The man in the mirror was a smear of reflection at the edge, tall, wearing a watch I knew because I'd admired it once in a magazine and laughed at the price. I didn't sleep that night. In the morning I opened Record and added my quiet. A copy of our lease with my name on both halves, the month she forgot. A photo of the second phone. The hotel folio with Ms. Ash scribbled on the top. I added a single line at the end, "I am not crazy." I didn't plan the toast then. I planned to leave. I even drafted the note in my head, the apartment key on the table, the ring in the box, the folder labeled for her father whose vocabulary includes honor. Then she humiliated me a third time, and my plan changed shape. It was her rehearsal dinner, a restaurant backroom filled with eucalyptus and money. She'd placed me at the far end with the cousins who say, "bro," to waiters. At dessert, she stood to speak about community. In her speech, I was a funny footnote, the guy who insisted on triple-checking the seating chart, the spreadsheet king, the cautious one who didn't believe in intuition until she taught him how. People laugh the laugh of people who don't know they're helping with a small execution. I swallowed it because standing up in that room would have made me into the story she was already writing. After, her mother kissed my cheek and whispered that marriage requires letting the woman lead. Her father clapped my shoulder and told me a man proves himself by what he can take. I walked to the bathroom and stood under the hand dryer because the noise gave me privacy. On the way back to the table I passed the coat room and saw Alina with the white phone lid at her hip, her mouth soft in a way it isn't with me. The screen showed a message bubble, blue. A name I didn't know. Words I knew too well. I kept walking. I had no interest in catching her, I was measuring where to place the knife so that the cut would be clean. The morning of the wedding, I woke at 5 and ironed a shirt like prayer. I put 2 copies of Record in 2 envelopes and handed one to Lydia, my aunt with the honest eyebrows, who looked at me like she'd heard thunder. I asked her to hold it until the toasts. She nodded once, solemn, as if we were about to bury something. The ceremony moved like an expensive dream. Vows written in a font. Her voice careful, my voice steady. We kissed, and people clapped like clapping could keep a truth from surfacing. In the photos, I look happy. I can perform. Between photos and dinner, I slipped into the hallway and called the number attached to the hotel folios. A man answered with a hello that had money in it, bright and unbothered. I said the wrong name the way a person does when they're checking for a ghost. He answered to it without pause. I hung up as if the phone were hot. I stood in the empty corridor, smelling roast meat and eucalyptus, and made a choice. If I was going to leave, I would not do it as the villain in a script someone else edited. I would leave my own evidence. I returned to the room full of glass and candles and guests who held their joy like champagne. The planner handed me a flute. The band tuned. The microphone waited on a stand by the dance floor, indifferent as a hammer. When I tell you I exposed her double life during the wedding toast, you might imagine shouting, spilled wine, a finger in someone's face. I am built for quieter things, precision, not volume. I spoke. I held a room. I placed a folder on a table that had only seen flowers. I watched a life try to split itself between the woman who made me into a joke and the man who would not be one. And then I began. I didn't clear my throat. I didn't tap the glass. I held the mic at a distance that makes voices sound like they're telling the truth. I thanked people for coming. I praised her mother's attention to detail, her father's wine cellar, the florist's ability to make eucalyptus into architecture. I said the right lines about love's daily work. Then I started naming names, my own first. The room settled, the room always does when a man declines to be charming. I said I am the man who packed a suitcase for my fiancée at 2 a.m. the night her flight got cancelled. I am the man who knows her shoe sizes and her coffee order and the way she hates when the sheets are tucked at the foot. I am also the man who learned she has a second phone, a second name, and a second address where her toothbrush lives. No shouting. No flourish. Just nouns, like the therapist had asked me to use when the truth finally required furniture. A noise came from the head table, air leaving a person too fast. Alina's face did what faces do when their muscles get conflicting instructions. Her mother shifted as if adjusting a painting that was suddenly hanging crooked. Her father's hand went to the knife he'd used to cut the roast. Humans reach for tools when their maps fail. I kept going, not because I enjoyed it, but because stopping would turn me into what she'd called me, sensitive, spiraling, dramatic. I described the hotel folios, the name on them, the note that requested discretion. I described the day suite charge on the card we were supposed to be closing because we had just combined our lives. I described the ride share to the loft in the neighborhood where you don't admit you live unless you can afford to be watched. I described the bouquet with "Always Friday" on the card, not because the phrase meant anything to me, but because it had clearly meant something to her. I did not name the man. I didn't need to. Those who knew, knew, those who didn't need the word. The details weren't revenge, they were coordinates. I set them down so no one could claim later I'd gotten lost on purpose. Someone from the back murmured. Someone near the band stood. My Aunt Lydia, God bless her, rested a hand on my mother's shoulder like a lid on a pot and kept her seated. The planner took 2 steps toward the soundboard and then 2 steps back. People rarely know where to put their hands when reality stops taking their suggestions. Alina stood. She looked as if she were going to speak and then chose not to. Instead, she reached for the mic with a smile trained for disasters. I didn't let go. Not roughly, firmly, the way you hold a door when someone is trying to close it on a fire. She sat, not because I forced her, but because she felt the room tip. I ended that first part with the only line I'd rehearsed: this is not theater, and I am not seeking applause, I am seeking to not be narrated by someone else's fear. Then I thanked the catering staff. Then I told the band they were excellent. People laughed, helpless and small. Breathing is a habit. It returns even in rooms like this. The second envelope waited with Lydia. She stood at the edge of the dance floor like a notary. When I nodded, she walked to Alina's father and handed him the folder labeled with his name. He opened it, eyes scanning the polite betrayals I'd catalogued. He did not look at me. He looked at his daughter. I watched his jaw loosen, not with surprise, with recognition. Perhaps he had known this trick in a younger body and thought his daughter would inherit the better parts of him. My own parents were quiet. My mother's hands were folded, thumbs rubbing as if in prayer. My father blinked and stared at the chandelier like light might instruct him. He is a man who fixes things. We have not yet invented the tool for this. You will ask what Alina did. She smiled. She reached for her glass of water in a motion so smooth it must have been practiced in mirrors. She said, to the room at large, that this was deeply inappropriate and a private matter. She said I was unwell and that she would not be publicly abused. She used the word abuse the way people use grenades when they want you to drop your own weapon and kneel. I said nothing to her. I spoke to the room. I said, I love this woman. I also love the person I am in the mirror when no one is watching. These two loves are at war. I am choosing the second because he has to live with me longer. Then I did something that surprised even me. I congratulated the guests on their free evening. I told them the bar would remain open for an hour out of respect for the staff's time. I thanked the band again. I set the mic back in its stand like a heartbeat. The first person to move was not her father or mine. It was her sister. She walked out, not to be dramatic, but because her legs needed a room with air. Then someone else stood. Then a cluster. People left and stayed in the patterns grief makes, diagonals, angles, pockets of denial. A few friends came to me with faces like wreckage and asked if I needed water, a ride, a plan. I needed none of the above. I needed to not be touched. Alina's mother cornered me near the exit and told me I had ruined a family. I told her I had ruined her evening. The family had asked me to lie as admission. She slapped my arm the way you swat a horse to make it move. I didn't move. I wasn't a horse. I was a man who had just taken off a weight. Outside, the night had the nerve to be beautiful. I stood under a tree and watched drunk kindnesses play out on the sidewalk, taxis hailed, shawls draped, apologies made for stepping on dresses. Behind me, through the glass, I could see Alina laughing too loudly at something her uncle said, the laugh of someone auditioning for a different show. The man with the watch never arrived. Perhaps he had better instincts than I did. I didn't sleep in our apartment. I went to my aunt's. She has a guest room that smells like laundry and soup and safety. The folder labeled "Record" lived on her kitchen table until morning, and we stared at it like you stare at an animal you found snarling at your door. We did not open it. We had already memorized its teeth. In the light, the practical began, which is the mercy of daylight. I called the venue and apologized to the staff, paid the remainder, and tipped double. I called the bank and closed the joint credit line. I called a lawyer whose website contained no photos of sunsets and scheduled a consultation. I texted my friend who owns the van and asked for help moving my essentials before we got to whose name sat on which page. Alina called mid-morning with a voice like ice cracking. She said I had defamed her. She said brides have cold feet and I had forced mine on her throat. She said I owed her public repair. I replied with a single sentence. I described provable facts. She said we could have fixed it in private. I asked when. She hung up. Her father called next, quieter. He asked if we could meet as men. I asked what that meant. He said he'd seen worse survive. I said I didn't want survival if it required a diet of lies. He sighed. Men sigh when another man refuses the club. He wished me well without using the word. The lawyer read my notes with the same calm someone might bring to a plumbing diagram. She gave me 3 lanes, annulment based on fraud, dissolution with speed if she cooperated, war if she didn't. She advised boring correspondence. She advised a new email address. She advised sleeping and water and no posts. I did as I was told because structure is dignity in a year like this. Not everyone approved of my method. A cousin wrote that I'd made a spectacle. A colleague suggested time heals and nudged me to apologize for the public mess. 2 of her friends sent paragraphs that used the word abusive 3 times without context. I archived them. A neighbor slipped a note under my door that read, in excellent penmanship, "You did the right thing. Please water your basil, it's wilting." I watered the basil. Alina posted a photo the next day of a bouquet with the caption, "Storms grow roots." Comments flooded in, hearts, prayers, subtle threats in lowercase. I blocked no one. I posted nothing. Silence is heavy, but it doesn't come due with interest. Her double life wasn't glamorous, it was logistical. 2 phones. 2 passwords. 2 versions of names at check-in counters. A friend's loft she called a studio. A man who liked being a secret because secrets feel like currency when you spend them with the right people. I don't know what he promised. I know what she promised me. I'm not interested in splitting hairs between vows and the idea of them. The annulment went through faster than I expected, slower than I wanted. Her counsel liked adjectives, mine liked bullet points. The judge had the face of someone who has seen very expensive people do very ugly things and no longer needs plot twists. He asked if this marriage had been entered into in good faith. I said yes, on my side. He asked if I believed the other side had concealed material facts. I said yes, and placed the folios on the desk. He did not look at me. He read the paper. Paper doesn't tremble when you stare at it. We split the gifts in a ritual that felt like dividing a dream into dishwasher-safe components. I returned what could be returned. I donated what couldn't. I kept 2 plates we'd chosen together because we still have to eat. I mailed thank you notes for a wedding that had been a performance interrupted by honesty. People wrote back with relief disguised as surprise. Some checks were stopped. I did not chase them. I'd had enough of running toward money that made me feel small. Months scraped past. I relearned quiet, grocery lists that didn't have to impress anyone, a couch that didn't judge how I slept, mornings where the coffee tasted like coffee instead of strategy. I moved my consultancy back to my own name after briefly agreeing to fold it into her creative studio, because love had made me generous with credit lines. Clients stayed. Work came. The basil stopped wilting. Once, in a store, I saw her across a rack of jackets, holding up a sleeve, performing delight for a woman I didn't recognize. She looked thinner in the way people do when they are carrying an invisible box. Our eyes met. We did not nod. There are greets you save for funerals. We kept walking. If you're looking for a bow, there isn't one. I didn't meet someone who healed me with a joke at a farmer's market. I didn't become a monk. I carry a folder in a drawer that says, record, and I rarely open it now, except on days when memory tries to collaborate with shame. On those days, I touch the envelope like wood and remember I am allowed to believe what I witnessed. What I learned is not Instagram. It won't fit in a square with serif font. It is plain. Humiliation makes good kindling. If you aren't careful, you'll burn your own house. Better to build a door and walk out. Better to tell the truth in a room that demands a story. Better to be the person who uses his name and his voice and his boring proofs than to become a rumor in your own life. She humiliated me in front of her family. I exposed her double life during the wedding toast. People think the toast was the punishment. It wasn't. The punishment is that I stopped being available for the role she'd written for me. The consequence is that when I look in mirrors now, I recognize the man looking back. He packs his own suitcase. He waters his basil. He makes coffee and doesn't measure his worth by how someone captures him in a caption. He knows what he will not be again, a prop, a punchline, the quiet page in someone else's plot. Tonight, I'm at my aunt's, eating soup that tastes like patience. The walnut dining table is old and honest. No one asks me to make the numbers louder. When someone toasts, it is for the ordinary miracle of days that don't require a speech. I raise my glass and let my mouth rest. The story, for once, doesn't need me to narrate it to be true.
Follow me for more stories.